This is René Vidal. I'm with Mark Bowser. Truly excited. Mark is president and CEO of Empowering Enterprises, a corporate training development company based just outside of Cincinnati. Mark is also an author. His latest book is called Sales Success. Mark, thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thanks, Renee. It's an honor to be able to be here with you today.
So, we're going to talk a little bit, or rather, you're going to share with us your wonderful expertise on mental toughness and how it relates to building championship sales teams and professionals. What are
Sure,
some of your
absolutely.
what are some of your thoughts there from a general perspective, and then we can get into some specific tips from your book.
Sure. I think mental toughness always starts from a team perspective, whether we're talking about an athletic team or a sales team. I think it all starts with the individual. It's how mentally tough and how disciplined each individual person is. From a sales standpoint, it's how disciplined are they to not only get out of the house and make calls, but how disciplined are they to improve themselves? The best of the best are the ones who are reading one sales book a month or two sales books a month, who are implementing those techniques over and over. The athlete that is mentally tough is what they're doing is they are actually getting up earlier than anyone else and getting out and doing the road work type of training. I was a competitive tennis player, as you know, Renee, for many years, and it was always about who was conditioned the most and who wanted it the most. So mental toughness goes both from a physical standpoint, but also a mental, emotional standpoint of how tough are you during the big times. And I remember a number of years ago, back in my youth, when I was still playing the competitive tennis, I had just come off of shoulder surgery. So I was still kind of hobbled just a bit, and my coach, he allowed me to play some of his younger players. And what that did was it put me back out on the court without putting a lot of stress on my shoulder, but it also gave those guys an opportunity to play somebody my experience and so forth. And I remember coming off the court after a practice match, and my coach, his name was Galen, or is Galen, and Galen goes, "Well, how did he do?" And I'm going, "Well, yeah, he's a pretty good player." I said, "But he didn't play the big points very well." And Galen looked at me and he goes, "I don't think he knows there's big points." And what he was meaning was, this kid was not mentally tough yet. He had good shots. He knew how to hit the ball, but he wasn't mentally tough when it came down, particularly the big points of tennis in the middle of a game where it's very tight. It might be 30-30 or it might be 40-30, and that's a big point. And he didn't play those very well. And so that happens in sales as well. And for a salesperson, that's when the buying tension is beginning to rise. Near the end of the sales call, everything's leading towards that very end. Now, I don't believe in the philosophy of that old mantra, that movie, always be closing. If you're always closing, you're going to kill yourself. My philosophy is you're always leading towards the close. And when do you close? You close when the prospect is ready. And a mentally tough sales champion, they know when to position that. They lead everything to that, and they know how to ask the obligating questions. They know how to persuade during those times when the buying tension is going sky high. Because during the end of a sales call, that's the scariest time for the salesperson as well as for the prospect, the potential customer. And the mentally tough ones don't let that stop them and learn how to navigate that to help their prospect acquire their product or service because they know it's the best choice for them. They know it's the best for them. I'm not one who believes that you can sell anything. I believe you can sell if you're passionate about what you're selling and you know it's of the best interest of the prospect. And in that case, that's when mentally toughness takes you to the top.
What have you seen in your work with companies with respect to the need for mental toughness training?
I think it's needed across the board. I think what's happening right now in corporate America is you do not have the disciplined, mentally tough individuals anymore. I think a lot of people are expecting it to be handed to them. Oh, I just graduated from college. You mean I can't be the president of the company? No, it doesn't work that way. and they want to take the shortcuts. Well, in many cases, there is not a shortcut to the C-level offices. You have to position yourself. You have to work hard. You have to show the effort and the results. And that's what concerns me more about anything else, is that we're not seeing that as much as we used to. We're seeing people all about themselves and out for number one, and that works only for a little while, and eventually that glass ceiling begins to cave in. So that's why I think mentally tough training is extremely important. It's interesting. There was an ESPN analyst a number of years ago who came out with and he actually has written a book on it now called Toughness, and it was his view about basketball players in particular, but beyond coaches of athletic sports, that particular concept of toughness has begun to seep down from athletics, I think, into corporate America. It's not near as much as it needs to be, as I just mentioned, but there is hope, and that's the bright light I think that's coming around the corner. If we can all keep pushing through this, we can teach the younger generation, the ones who are at the entry level job positions, what toughness is and why that's going to help them reach the pivotal of whatever they want in their career. Without it, they won't reach it.
So, Mark, what period of time are we contrasting, today's entitlement mentality to? Was it there in the 80s, the 90s? Was there a specific tipping point? What have you seen?
I think it's always been there to a certain extent, but it is much higher than it has ever been. Now, I don't think we've hit a tipping point as of yet. I think we're teetering just a bit, but we haven't hit the tipping point. And my hope is that it will tip backwards, if you will, back into the hard work. And you look at what's going on just from a political standpoint right now is you have so many people, you mentioned entitlements, so many people would rather have something handed to them instead of work for it. And part of it is they've never had that pride of ownership, that pride of taking something and making it yours and creating something, whether it's creating a business or whether it's owning your first home. And without that pride, humble pride, that's where we could tip over the edge. And so I think it's a process of educating people of why you don't want something for nothing. Why that's not good for you, but that's not good for the entire economy. And it's basically would be a salesperson walking into a company and saying, "You're not buying my stuff? Well, you're supposed to. You're not supposed to say no." And it's as if we're entitled for everybody buying everything that we sell from a sales point, or being handed everything that we want to be to reach the C level if it's a career. So we want to be the CEO or the CEO or the CFO in our second week. And so we have, to answer your question, we haven't hit a tipping point, but we're pretty close. We're pretty close. And if it goes over the edge, that's where we're going to have a long road back.
So let's take a quick hop step and segue to, what sales leaders and managers can do beyond the obvious of, recruiting for character, so to speak, and bringing people on board who have all of these qualities in spades. What can sales managers and leaders do from a developmental standpoint to bring their people and teams along?
I think, first of all, it is constant training, encouraging their people to be continual learners. And a lot of sales managers do this. A lot of sales managers know that. But we still don't have enough people who are making that weekly meeting, that weekly sales meeting, prosperous. And if it was prosperous, the sales champions would not hesitate going to those meetings. They would want and be motivated to go to those meetings. But what they're seeing right now in some companies is it's a waste of their time, where they're thinking, I could be out selling right now, or I could be on the phone prospecting right now.
Exactly.
And so I think it's taking that type of meeting and making it worthwhile. And one way that they can do that is you take one nugget per meeting, 1 terms of experience, not age, needs to know, and the veterans need to be reminded of, is that we have to create value first. We want to walk in and sell, sell, sell. Well, they may not know us from Adam. And so why would they trust us? So we have to create value first with them. Sometimes you create value by giving something away. Sometimes you create value by giving a discount. Sometimes you create value by spending time with them until they feel comfortable with you. And once that value and quality is proven to them, then many times they'll be willing to move forward towards the sale. Zig Ziglar used to talk about that when somebody complains about your price, where they're saying, that product you got there, yeah, you're kind of proud of that thing, where you're a little too expensive. He says what that's actually saying is they're saying, for my big old stack of money, you're offering me a tiny little value. And what we have to do is we have to flip that pendulum to where they're seeing, I may be paying $10,000 for these goods, but I'm getting $100,000 worth of value. And when they begin to see that, that's the first step. Another thing I think sales managers can do is they have to get people proud of the profession itself. In my book, Sales Success, which we are very, very honored and thrilled with, it hit bookstores in May of 2016, is Mr. Ziegler. It's one of the last projects that Mr. Ziegler was part of before he passed away. And in the part that he contributed to the book is he talks about the proud profession, talking about selling, is that salespeople need to be proud of who they are and what they do for the entire economy. And what happens is, when people hear the word salesperson, oh, you couldn't get anything else to do? Oh, you couldn't get a real job? The thing is, that's totally false. That was a myth that was set by things such as a play by the death of a salesman and the hard knocks and bad rap that used car salesmen get. Basically, there's unethical people in every industry. But what has happened is you get the 1 or 2% of unethical salespeople, and now we've all been branded that. And what Mr. Ziegler was bringing back is you got to be proud. Nothing happens in the entire economy until somebody sells something. Nothing happens. And he talks about, for example, he says, do you use paper when you write your order? And most salespeople go, well, yeah. We do a lot of email nowadays, but our contracts are, they're on paper. Well, he says, do you realize that until you sold something, that wasn't paper? He said that used to be a tree. And he goes through the entire process of how, because somebody sold something, they need more paper, which means the lumber mills have to make more paper and so forth. And he goes through a number of illustrations in the book about that, explaining why salespeople are needed. It is one of the most pivotal professions and most needed professions and most honorable professions that the American economy needs and uses and is always needed and used.
So it starts with the sales leader.
It does. It was John Maxwell who said everything rises and falls on leadership. And if the sales manager sets the tone, the sales champions will move forward. And when the sales champions, the top of the salespeople on that particular team begin to move forward, that'll bring the younger folks, in terms of experience, again, not in terms of age, younger salespeople along as well. They have to learn from the veterans. They have to learn from the successful people and do what they do, model what they do, and when that happens, they're going to close more sales as well. And so if they do those couple things, create more value first, they begin to realize to be proud of the profession, then some nuts and bolt things that the sales leader can teach their team and how to be tough and how to be an expert at selling is they have to learn how to actually build rapport with people. We are what's called relationship selling. And so we spend quite a bit of time in the book talking about behavioral styles. How do you connect with people who may be different than you? And it's all about how they process information. And that we need to basically communicate to people the way they need it versus the way we want to be communicated to. And so it's basically speaking their language. And if you speak their language and you listen really well, people will tell you what they need. People people will tell you how to sell to them. But what happens is we get so focused on how we need to be communicated to that we're not thinking about that person's different from us, and we must communicate differently to them in order to reach them.
That's terrific stuff, Mark. So to summarize, would you agree there's 3 steps? Number 1, create value first. Number 2, be proud of what you do, as a sales manager, leader, and professional. And 3, focus on building relationships that last.
Bingo. That's the big 3. And then once that happens, yes, you have to know how to close sales. Yes, you have to know your product inside and out. You have to know how to present. But you can have all of those things. If you don't have those first 3, it's not going to matter.
I got it. So where can we find your book, Mark?
You can find it pretty much anywhere books are sold. It's in major bookstores. It's on Amazon. It's probably the easiest place to get it. You can get obviously the ebook as well as the physical book on there. The audiobook will be coming out, I think, in about a month or so. And so about anywhere you want to get it, you can find it. It's Sell Success by Mark Bowser and with Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, and Scott McCain.
And before we wrap up for good today, what cool things do you have going on in your business?
Well, the thing that we're working on right now, we're really excited about, it's kind of a new transition in writing for me, is I partnered up with Danny Lane. Danny Lane is one of the multiple Hall of Fame martial artists. Been a student of Chuck Norris's for over 35 years, 2 Purple Hearts in Vietnam, 9-time martial arts champion of the country, and so forth, just to speak a few of his accomplishments. And so Danny and I, he's actually my martial arts instructor, and we just started talking, and we started writing down his story. And it's just an exciting adventure of how do you overcome and how do you survive whatever life hits you with. And how do you survive it and keep surviving it until you begin to thrive. And so talking about mental toughness, Danny Lane's all about mental toughness. And so that's something that he and I are working on right now, and we'll hopefully be able to wrap that up and get that published in bookstores next year.
How can people find you online?
Real simple, at markbowser.com. It's MarkBowser.com.
Well, very cool. Mark, we're very grateful for the time that you've given us today. This is really great content and tips on mental toughness for sales champions. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right.